Good Monday morning. Welcome to the Olson Advantage. I'm Dave Olson, the Olson Properties Team. Today we're going to hit our third video on the month of May and the recap for Phoenix and its surrounding markets. We left you with a slide at the end of the last video showing where all the markets were. Now we had 17 markets that were considered seller markets. We had 5 markets that were considered balanced markets, and another 5 that were considered balanced, and 7 that were considered buyer markets. But how we get to balance is the amount of volume that's taking place relative to each one of those markets. So 17 on the seller side seems a little heavily weighted. There's very little activity, and the reason there's very little activity and what's holding prices up in those markets is the lack of inventory. There are areas where there's substantially more inventory, and those are the ones that are buyers markets, because obviously the amount of inventory helps dictate what they can charge for those homes' prices. And some of those areas as well are heavily influenced if you're selling at resale home and you have a lot of building that's taking place. That's additional competition relative to what's taking place in your market. So some of those that are considered seller markets, they are basically without a lot of the influence from the new construction, so they're not equally as affected. So when we dive in and look at the closed rate, with May finished, we had 7,093 total transactions, which is off quite a bit from a year ago at 7,687. Now, we did have fewer days to sell. Depending on how the month takes place, we can only close Monday through Friday. So we had more weekend days this May than we did last May. But when we look closely, we had 322 per day versus 349 per day a year ago. So a substantial difference. May, June is typically where we peak in terms of total transactions for the month. Now, where are we historically on an appreciation? So we're about 2% off our all-time high from June of 22 and May, June of 22. So we're only 2% below. Again, we talked about it as the shark fin. We went straight up to that peak and then we immediately dropped off. It wasn't a sustained amount of money or a sustained amount of selling that took place. It was very much a shark fin. So it was straight up, straight down, and we've seen the results subsequent to that. Now, when we look at supply, which is driving a lot of this, when we compare 2024 supply to 2015, 2016, and 2014, we can see we're well below those years in terms of total supply. If we roll in a couple other months, when we look at more recently, 17, 18, and 19, we're actually above 18 and 19, but we're not quite to where we were in 2017 to kind of put things into perspective, the number of homes. And understand, we've added significantly more people in all of those years than we had prior. So we have more people looking for housing than we did in any of these years. When we want to keep that in mind when we're looking back historically. Now, when we look at the most recent 3 years, so when we look at 2020, 2022, and 2021, we're substantially above those last several years in terms of total supply. And that's why it's a much more friendly, balanced market. It hasn't changed the pricing of homes. Homes are not falling like a lot of people would expect or think. And again, the amount of supply at, say, 18,000 homes for a city and a community as large as Phoenix, Arizona is not that much inventory. It's probably about 3 months of supply, which would mean, and that's probably closer to 2.5. So what that means is if no more homes come on the market and every home gets sold, we really only have about 2.5 months of supply. So we would sell through that 18,000 plus homes. If no additional ones come on market, in 2.5 months, we'd be completely out of inventory. So healthy is closer to 6 months of supply so that we feel completely balanced. The reason we're balanced now, we have very few buyers. Interest rates are driving a lot of that. People are waiting for some sort of change. We expect a change probably in the next couple months for sure, some sort of a change, just so that the current administration can take credit for that. And then regardless of what happens with the election, we expect further changes to come probably, close to the end of the year, certainly by the beginning of next year. And once we get back into the low sixes or anything with a 5 in it, we should see a significant change in the amount of activity in our market. Now, one of the things that's been a factor, and we mentioned it earlier, is new construction. And again, if you have anybody that's interested in new construction, that's fine. It's great to build from the ground up, pick the home that you want, but you'll absolutely want to encourage them to get a real estate agent to walk them through the process, to bring outside and only go with builders that will allow third-party inspections throughout the entire process to protect yourself. The quality of the homes that are being built, unfortunately, because of lack of skilled labor, is subpar. And you should absolutely, for the premium that you're going to be paying, you should absolutely have somebody on your side, actually several people on your side. You want to build a team and have them help and guide you through that process, and you'll end up with a much better end result. And you'll find out 2 and 3 years from now, when you're all standing out in front of your brand new homes, talking to your neighbors, why you don't have all the issues that they're having and why nobody seems to want to fix them. So we could see that single family permits have jumped up a little from last year in 24. When we go to overall sales, we can see that we have a definite trend up over since 2011. Again, 2011 was really when they just started building again after our debacle here in real estate and across the country. It's really hard to find a 2009-10 home if you look in the MLS, because there was so much inventory that we had to work our way through. They really didn't start building actively, and there was a lot of consolidation of builders. A lot of the small guys went away until 2011. So we can see a nice steady trend up. There's a lot of confidence on behalf of those very large companies who are making very substantial investments, particularly in the Phoenix market, that things will be good and that their money is safe, their investors' money are safe. Again, most of these companies are all publicly traded. But when we look at what's driving that as well, and they participate in this as well, concessions, they're buying down rates for some of these new home buyers to help make this whole thing seem more palatable. Those things are available. We get sent information on that about our buyers, like, hey, bring your buyers. We're offering, rates in the low 5s and other types of incentives. They send those to us directly. Those are things you may not see or hear about if you just walk in the door. Again, if you go in and you buy a home on your own, you will sign documentation that says, I am an unrepresented buyer and I'm representing myself. You have nobody advocating on your behalf, and that's not probably what you want to be doing when you're spending, $500,000 to $600,000-$700,000. So about 47% of all transactions have concessions through the end of May. What does that look like in total dollars? The average transaction had $9,450 in additional concessions. Those concessions go to closing costs. They can be for all sorts of things, from just the normal closing costs that takes place with the concessions. But when you see a number that high, a lot of that is buying down the buyer's rate. So whether that's a home for sale in your neighborhood or a home for sale at a new construction site, only the seller has the opportunity to buy that rate down. It is not permanent. It's a short-term opportunity, but in general, that same lender will refinance you at no charge to you should rates drop, and they'll do it free for one time. So that, again, it's another opportunity. So when we look at all these concessions on the map, where are most of the areas where the greatest amount of concessions are taking place? This speaks to the whole new construction. So when we look at them on a map, most of them are in those darker blue areas, which is the West Valley and the Southeast Valley, where a majority of the new construction building is taking place. So they are driving a lot of this additional interest in housing currently. When we look at days on market, and this is more so on a resale situation, we're at about 27 days, which is neither high nor low, but it's much longer than it had been when things were crazy. You know, we were selling homes in a weekend. 27 days, and it's still not historically typical. We used to always tell people 45 to 60 days, so we're about half that right now. So expect that if you're going to list your property. So when we look at the year over year, May over May, from 23 to 24, we'll run through the numbers real quickly. We're up about 5.2% when we look at the average price of a home. When we look at square feet, when we look at the median, we're up about 4%. So half of the homes are more than that, half of the homes are less than that. When you look at sales over asking price, we're about 19% or over. It's a point lower than we were a year ago. We were at 18% a year ago. When we look at seller concessions, again, 43%. The median concession across the board is $8,771. When we look at sales price to list price, which is what did I list my home for and what did it actually sell for, we're at about 97.9%, which is historically a little bit lower than normal. We'd like to be in the 98.5, which is typical. That's where we like to be and where we often are. And then again, days on market, we're sitting at about 27 days, which is up 5 days from last year. Hopefully you found all this information useful. Again, if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to text the word answers to 59559, and know that you can always call or text me directly with any questions at 623-570-4464. Thanks so much. Make it a great day.